And then we're going to get started. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us to Networks Live on Demand. I'm Liz Jones from Blue Star Families, and today I have with me Erica McManus, the founder of Instant Teams, who's going to talk to us about the EVE method. If you're joining us via Facebook Live and you have a question, you can ask it in the comments below and I'll make sure to bring it forward. If you're joining us via the Zoom platform, you can ask your question using the Q&A box at the bottom or the chat feature on the side. Either or is completely fine. So Erica, thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's been a while. I think we did this last, in May, maybe?
Yeah, it has been all summer.
I'm in a different location. I have PCS since then. So, it's just fun wherever we are, we can catch up and bring some good stuff to the community.
Very true, very true. And we're really excited. I'm really excited to hear about this method because of the fact that you created it. So this is something that you've noticed throughout your time.
Yes. So as a part of Instant Teams, and I'll just give a quick recap of what we do so that everybody knows. So at Instant Teams, we build remote teams for companies across the nation. And the part that we do that serves the community is that 99% of our remote teams are built with military connected talent. So we are majority military spouses. We do have veterans. We have retirees. We just have this really cool community of about 80 going on 90 remote team members that we've built remote teams for our customers. And we specialize in customer success, customer service teams. We also do admin and marketing and tech teams. So through that and being 100% remote, we have done a lot of interviews over the past about 18 months, specifically to how we build teams now. And while these are all virtual, it's a little bit different of a dynamic. So we'll kind of talk about that back and forth, whether a lot of these tips obviously apply to in-person and virtual, but how we've noticed them in the virtual component a little bit more. But yes, these are things that we have noticed. It's not that people aren't ready. It's not that they don't have the skill set. It's not that they don't have the desire. It is really execution sometimes that shoots people in the foot when they're on an interview. So through all of these interviews that we've done, we do two ways. We have a video recording platform where people will come on and do like a short interview really with themselves first, and they record the questions, and then we play that back to kind of help vet and pre-qualify people. And then we actually do a live, what we call intro view, which is being introduced to the customer for the first time and just kind of another way. So between those two things, we have definitely seen just repetitive things that we know that we can help kind of build confidence in as people head into these types of interviews.
Awesome. So when you sign up for Instant Teams, you guys actually do like a mock interview first before going forward. And that's just, information for me because I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really, it's a mock interview with yourself. So we send you a link and you get on, and it's a series of 5 questions, and the question is presented. You see yourself in the box. You have a test, so you can kind of practice it once and then click actually go, and then you record yourself answering, and then it will take you to the next one. And you can just even see what, when we go back and watch a lot of these, like it's the first time somebody's like, oh gosh, like I'm on camera, and the lighting or the chaos. So we'll talk through all of that today for sure.
Awesome. Great. Thanks. All right. So I basically, I want to know what it is. What is the EVE method? Like, what does it stand for, and where did it come from, other than you seeing all these things in interviews in the past?
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of consolidate like the 3 things that we've seen and we talk a lot about in our teams, like, that interview or that video recording was great, but, these are the things that they could have done better. And, we're military, we love acronyms. Acronyms are easy to remember. They're catchy. Like, they're just a really great way to like kind of put information out that you can remember easily. So the EVE method is 3 tips that we've kind of consolidated out of seeing all these different interviews that you can take with you. They're very tactical. I think there's so many great resume prep, career prep, interview prep type stuff out there. And then these are just 3 like very small but tactical things you can just take right in with you, whether it's a virtual interview or in person. So the first E stands for eye contact. The V stands for voice control. And the third E is every word counts. And And we can kind of walk through each of those real quick. And if you're taking notes, write it down. If not, I'll kind of make a comment after the Facebook Live, kind of typing it out. So you can kind of copy and paste it and save it for going forward. You want me just to jump into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to know about eye contact because I feel like for me, it's always hard to pay attention to the camera and not the person.
Right.
So it's a little off.
Yeah. So in general, eye contact, it can be really uncomfortable for people, or some people love it. So I think you have to know. And if you've never thought about, do I avoid eye contact? Do I love eye contact? Like, just take a second and just think about that. I'm an introvert and I love observing complete body language. I get a lot of information from that. I know how to respond to people. It's just who I am and how I function. So if I get into like an intense eye contact situation, I start to feel really uncomfortable because all of a sudden I'm making eye contact and I don't have like the visual of the whole story. And that's just something I've had to learn through personal development or career coaching and those types of things. So just know where you sit on that spectrum of eye contact. Sounds really simple, but eye contact is very important, especially in a very formal setting. It allows people to know that you're interested, that you are focused, that you are very present. And it can get a little weird virtually, right? I think that's a little bit more natural of an expectation when you're in a physical setting, because somebody's across the desk, you're physically present in a room, and it's more natural of a conversation. I think people get a little weirded out when it becomes virtual because, one, like you said, you're like, am I looking here at the camera? Am I looking straight at the person? What am I doing? So best way is just to hop on and practice those types of things. If Google has a free video thing where you can just hop on and look around, see what the room looks like behind you, see where you make best eye contact, record yourself doing it. That just lets you know where to look, who to focus on. And the best tip is just to look straight at the person. Like, I'm looking at your face right now as I'm talking. I'm not looking up at the camera, and just make it as natural as possible. Another one I think that happens often is people get distracted, especially on virtual calls or virtual interviews, where you may just lose your train of thought, right? It's a weird environment. You're already stressed. You know you're about to say something and then you forget. I've always kind of have like a life hack tip of just look out the window really quick and come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, there was something happening outside. Like, I'm present and paying attention. Like, that way there's not like an awkward silence and you haven't like totally gone off, the track with the interview. So just recover quickly if there is a moment where something distracting happens, to where you've lost eye contact or you've lost like focus on the session. And I think the hardest part, especially for our community, is the minimization of distractions during a virtual interview, for sure. Again, you're in a physical interview, would you walk in with your 3 kids and have the lawnmower guy standing outside the door and have your dishwasher and your laundry? Like, none of that happens in a physical setting, so people don't even think about it. But when you are interviewing virtually, really go through that process of thinking, okay, what could happen while I am sitting in my house on an interview for 30 minutes? You and I actually just had this discussion. It happens all the time when you work remotely.
Yes.
So what kind of things can you put into place to minimize distraction at a maximum?
Yeah.
And if that is having to ask a neighbor to take your kids for 20 minutes so you can knock out an interview, there's nothing more frustrating than just preparing yourself and being ready to knock it out of the ballpark. And, you think your 3-year-old is good with the iPad on the couch for 20 minutes, but right, totally unpredictable. Nobody can control what that 3-year-old's going to do. So the tip there, kind of closing out the eye contact part, which doesn't seem really to go together, but the distraction leads from the eye contact not happening anymore, is to really minimize distractions at a maximum when you're going to do a virtual interview.
Great. And then the second one is voice control.
Yes. You can tell a lot from a person by their voice. You can sense fear, trepidation, confusion, irritation. Like, these are all things I have heard through voice and tone, specifically in virtual interviews. Again, I think when you're in a physical setting, it's a little more natural to be cognizant of how you're replying to somebody. But not everybody is great at having that filter, right? So be really aware when you are talking in an interview, your speed, your voice control, your tone. Are you responding in a tone that's like, sounds like you're irritated that they asked you? Are you answering really slow and unsure because you're thinking? Like all of those things give kind of these unspoken data points to people that are talking to you about a job. It's really important to pay attention to those. Everybody gets nervous, like that's just natural. So the more that you can practice and know what makes you uncomfortable in those settings, the better. And I know we'll talk about some resources and fun ways to kind of practice that. But the voice control is really the modulation and the tone and the way that you are delivering the words that you are saying to an employer.
That's interesting that you brought up speed because I'm a Chicagoan and a fast talker, and I always just expect everyone else to listen very quickly. And that's always not the case.
Nope. Yeah, especially as the spouse community, when we are from somewhere else. And, you know, if you're a New Yorker interviewing in Alabama or Georgia, like just the dictation of language in those places is completely different. So may not seem like something you should pay attention to, but it can make a difference. And you never want to make yourself seem inauthentic. Right. But there are things that you can do to kind of better match the environment of the person who's talking to you.
Exactly. And that's why every word matters.
Perfect lead in. Yeah, every word matters in an interview, and you only have a set amount of time. That could be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, could be an hour. It depends on the type of interview that you're doing. But every word counts. And even the words that you waste, like, well, like those types of things immediately present you as somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. And that is usually not the truth, right? And I mean, I do it. I say, I say, well, like that's a public speaking practice type thing. Mm-hmm. But when you hesitate, if somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer, or it's something you haven't done, that moment and how you respond to that can make or break the opportunity. So if you're asked a question, something you've never done, or a word that you don't know, somebody said, I'm so guilty of using those words. Yes, we all are, right? It's just a part of inexperience in public speaking. Right. But there are ways that we'll talk about that you can practice that. Yeah. In that moment, if you respond with, right, you've already lost them. They know that you don't know what either the word that they've said or the question, you know, you can't answer the question. So have those scripted type responses in your pocket, like 2 or 3. And I'll drop those in the comments below here after the Facebook Live too, like just 2 or 3 little quips that you can have in your pocket that you know you can just say. If somebody asks you a question in an interview that you don't know, or you just don't know how to answer, it's kind of a generalized way of responding to it with asking for more information. You know, you can be honest. You can say, you know, I haven't experienced that before. Is there, you know, explain that a little bit more to me. Maybe I'll be able to show you some experience or make a connection to that for you. If you respond to that with that immediately, they're going to be like, okay, this person's vulnerable. They're not afraid to ask a question. They're a lifelong learner. Like those types of judgment calls are made really, really quickly in those moments. So eye contact, voice control, and every word counts for sure.
Absolutely. One of the questions that we had, is there any one of the points that you outlined that are more important than another? Are they all kind of on the same playing field?
I wouldn't say any of them are more important than the other, but you're going to gravitate to the one that you're the worst at, probably. Or if there's one that scares you the most, you're going to try to steer away from it the most. That's the one you need to go to. So, you know, it's a lot of emotional intelligence. And if that's something you've never heard before, Google it. I absolutely love it. I think the more we can learn about ourselves, the better off we are. And these 3 tips really play into that. You have to know who you are, how you process, how you respond to fear, how you respond to uncertainty. And once you understand those types of things about yourself, and there are practices and methods and experiences to where you can learn those things, then those tactical tips that can be put into practice really will help you present yourself better.
All right. One of the questions that we had, is it better to have silence than to use filler words? And you kind of answered that by saying have a little bit, a couple, you know, sentences or something in your back pocket that you can kind of whip out if you need it.
I think strategic pauses are fine. Like if you've got to think for a couple seconds before you say something, if that's your natural rhythm and you know that you present that well, I think that's probably not everybody, right? Some somebody may pause or have silence and then not know how to kick that back in. And I think that's probably an introvert versus extrovert thing, like just different uncomfortable levels in those types of situations. My recommendation is just to always have something that you're going to say, even if it's a question you could answer, but you've lost your train of thought. Like, what is something that you can say to get yourself back on track, or have them repeat the question for you?
Yeah. Is there any, sorry. I got another question. How can you practice to perfect the Eve method? Ooh, that's a good one.
Yes. So we talked about this before.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, public speaking can really help you perfect, whether it's the Eve method or just how to speak to people outside of a normal conversation with your friends or family or network. There are different places that you can practice those types of things. There's an organization called Toastmasters, and it's an organization that is designed to help you be a very efficient public speaker. And you can walk in having never spoken publicly in any way, and they're there to support you through that. And basically what you do is you come up with some topic that you want to talk about, you get up, and then you're critiqued. So you have to be prepared for what's coming to you. It's always very constructive, but it's also very, very beneficial. They'll point out and count for how many times you said, what your body language was doing, your tone of voice, your inflection. And that seems extreme. Like, I just want to succeed in an interview. I don't want to be a public speaker. But right. Those are the ways, like the farther you can move where you feel uncomfortable and fear away, the more natural those easier levels of those types of experiences become.
So they seem like they're very similar as far as just interviewing and public speaking, or virtually interviewing, especially because you don't get that whole picture of the body language and everything else that goes along with it. It's just kind of like your face on a camera. Yeah. So yeah, I could definitely see how, public speaking can kind of be intertwined in there. As far as resources, what else do you know of that can help besides Toastmasters? I mean, across the board and on everything, with the eye contact and the voice control and all of it.
A benefit we have to be in the military community is that there are a lot of organizations that have already done heavy lifting on those types of things for us. So there are organizations that host like mock interviews, and they will put you through actual practice interviews. Organizations like HHUSA, Hiring Our Heroes, they have a really cool, even a resume generator for military spouses called Career Spark, which is super cool if you've never done it, because it already has the spouse story in mind when they created that tool. So really good place to start. See, I said, I catch myself now because I've been like done it enough. I'm like, dang it, I just said, it happens. Did it again. But what was the other one? Oh, MSEP. So MSEP also has career counselors, and it's a DoD sponsored program. You can sign up, they'll schedule an appointment, and you can just talk through whether it's your whole career journey, what you're looking for, but also through some interview prep, mock interview type things as well.
We got another good question over here. Janet says, you mentioned what not to say and that every word matters. What are some words that should be used?
That is a really, really good question, because there is also such thing as oversharing. For people who really like to talk and who like to overshare, that can be like the opposite extreme of an interview situation. I don't think there's any words specifically, I mean, other than like cussing or derogatory or just inappropriate language, right? Like, hopefully everybody knows that's not the place to be doing that in an interview. But I would advise against oversharing. A lot of times, maybe your personal situation, if you are running 5 minutes late and you finally get there, whether it's virtual or not, you don't need to give them the 411 on why you were running late. Professionally, you just say, I apologize, I'm here now, let's move forward. So the oversharing can definitely be a detriment to the situation, just like not knowing what to say to begin with can be.
Okay. And then we had a question that came in over email about just kind of re-entering the workforce. And I know that's kind of a little off topic, but I know you're an expert at it, so I kind of want to just throw it out there.
Yeah, that is a really difficult one, and also something that we see daily from the military spouse community, right? There are gaps in people's resumes. There are lifelong, decade-long dedications to the spouse community or volunteering, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I thought I did something for the past 30 years and now I need to go get a job and nobody thinks I've done anything. So that is a daily conversation. So be sure that you first acknowledge that you are not alone and there is a network of people who understand that. Right. That being said, it is still difficult depending on the type of job you are applying for, the type of corporation or company that you're applying to. There are a lot of barriers that do set you back having a gap. So there are various ways that you can address that. There are different types of resumes. And if you don't know this, definitely look into it. There are chronological resumes, which most of us are used to, where it's like date this, date this, date this. And those are the most evident ones to show gaps, right? You can immediately see, oh, there's a 7-year gap, throwing that one aside. I don't do that, but that's what most people do. We prefer functional resumes. As a company at Instant Teams designed to support the community, we know that there are gaps. So we've designed how we look for candidates to not even really be highly concerned with time or the chronological experience or even the gaps, because we believe that there is still a skill set there that, given the right opportunity, can be very, very successful in a role. And that's really, other companies are missing out by not adopting that, and more are, and there's kind of a tide and the change of that starting to come. So look at a functional resume, look at the chronological resumes and how they differ. And then there's kind of a hybrid. So if you have control over how you're making your resume, look at those. And I would really recommend the functional resume. A really strong functional resume can kind of help you combat that. The hard part comes in if you're using like an internet application process where you don't have control over it. And it literally is like, give me this date, give me this date. You can't get away from that. So you're going to have to put that in. And sometimes your saving grace in that situation can be the cover letter or like the extra paragraph they let you write at the end of the application. Mm-hmm. And my recommendation in how to use that cover letter is to intimately know the role you're applying for. Research the company, research Glassdoor, people who've done this job before you, really, really, really know those fine details of that job, because then in a cover letter or in additional information, you can bullet out like, I know this position needs this. This is how I've done this. I know you look for these types of people. I possess all your core values because of this. So you can kind of combat those things that maybe you don't have control over when you're applying for a job in some of those other ways.
Awesome. Great. If anyone has any questions, please go ahead and ask them. Like I said, you can use the chat feature if you're on Zoom, or the question and answer box, or the comment feature on Facebook Live. I kind of just wanted to recap a little bit and go back over the Eve method just one more time, just starting with your the eye contact and voice control, and then every word matters. Is there anything that you specifically wanted to point out?
No, I think it's just a good way to just have an extra little arsenal of support just to know when you're walking in. And every time before you go into an interview, just like give your process through the best thing. And it sounds contradictory to what I'm about to say, is imagine your worst case scenario. Like, just allow yourself to go there, because that's where your fear is living. Like, what if I do this? What if I fail? What if this happens? What if I embarrass myself? Right? So actually let yourself go to that worst case scenario and play it all out in your head. Worst case scenario is, I'm going to be so nervous, I drop something on the floor and it shatters, or I'm going to just like sweat profusely, like whatever it is, like go ahead and play that out in your head, because that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. You will still walk out of that interview breathing, with opportunities ahead of you, with friends that you can go vent to, right? Like, let that fear and that worst case scenario play out, so it's done and it's out of your mind, and you can kind of then like reverse engineer yourself into the success of what you want to walk into. That was a tip given to me actually when I was practicing for my first ever pitch competition. I am an introvert. I don't like to be in the spotlight or front and center on stage. And that was a really helpful tip to me. Like, okay, worst case scenario is play it out in my head. It's over. That's not going to happen, because usually your worst case scenarios are not realistic, right? They're just anxiety ridden. Mm-hmm. And once you acknowledge kind of that beast, you can then position yourself, okay, now I am in control. Now I know, and walk into it. And I think something that spouses take for granted is that we thrive in uncertainty. Like, don't forget that when you walk into an interview. We have to move and go into new networks and new locations totally blind. We are always in uncertain situations, and yet we figure out how it's going to work and we end up being successful. So if you kind of frame your mindset about going into interviews that way, like, this is uncertain, I am not in control of this, I'm going to be asked things I don't know, you don't know the person's personality, those types of things, like, just kind of grasp to that unspoken skill that you do thrive in uncertainty, and you really can march forward being successful.
All right. We definitely have some more questions. When doing a virtual interview, what do you recommend the background look like? Ooh, that's good.
That is a good one. Well, you and I have similar backgrounds, so
home office.
Yeah. I think the key is to make it somewhat professional. And if your last resort is just a blank wall and you have to sit on the floor and have a blank wall behind you and this is all you see, like, do that. I really recommend blank walls or a wall that has, looks somewhat professional. Obviously, if you're being interviewed from home, you're going to be in your home. So I guess the best way to answer that is to recommend what to stay away from, probably.
No dirty laundry.
Yeah, don't be sitting in a room where the laundry, like, happening down the hallway in this house right now, is on the bed and needs to be put away. Don't sit on your bed to where you can see the pillows behind you. Like, you may end up working like that when you work from home if you want to. Whole different conversation about how to make yourself work from home. But the more that you can show that professional level, the better first impression that's going to be. There's even in your car, like, worst case scenario, if you're traveling, like, I actually interviewed somebody and we hired them as she was PCSing, and she let me know ahead of time, hey, I'm going to have 20 minutes to stop at a Panera. We are PCSing on the road, but I really want to do this interview. Just giving you a heads up on what my environment's going to be like. That's amazing, right? You've given somebody a heads up, you give them a professional courtesy. So just be sure that your personal life is not so highly evident. Like I said, if you walked into a physical interview with all your kids and your dirty laundry basket and you're right, like, it's funny if you think about it that way.
Just you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it, right? So don't take that level of, like, laid back, chill when you're doing a virtual interview.
Awesome. Another one is it okay to pause after getting questions to think about it? She said, I'm afraid I talk too much and it makes me sound nervous.
Yeah. So pause if you do talk a lot and you need to pause, and that's like the trigger that you've trained yourself to, like, okay, pause and go forward. That's completely fine. They even teach you in public speaking to have strategic pauses to allow people, like, when you're finishing like a section or a piece of content, pause, because that's kind of like the reset moment, and then you're moving on to the next thing. So I think pauses, as long as they aren't really drawn out and awkward, especially if you do like to talk and you are, a fast talker, if that's your method and your trigger to help you through that, then yeah, I think that's completely fine.
Great. And then just to wrap it up, the last question was repeating the resources one more time.
I'll go slower because I get excited and I think I talk too fast too. All right. So the DoD program called MSEP, that is the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. And that is a DoD program designed to bring in employers who are committing to recruiting, retaining, hiring, and promoting military spouses. So if you don't know about that organization, it is excellent. Instant Teams is an employer partner of MSEP. They have an annual conference every year where all the companies get together. So you can actually create a profile on their website to kind of put yourself forward as a candidate to these companies who have committed to that. Or the other part of their kind of outreach to military spouses is they also have career counselors who are all very highly educated and pre-vetted and qualified to kind of walk you through some of those steps. So that's one. Toastmasters was the one that we talked about to just kind of get comfortable with public speaking. It is not a military affiliated thing. It is civilian, it is global. They actually have international competitions to where people just have their speech and you just work your rank up, and then there's winners, and you don't have to go that far. You can just go to practice and kind of hone in on your own skill and really work through those confidence factors. Like that's really what this is all about, is your ability to sell yourself. At the end of the day, nobody else can do that for you. I can believe in you 1,000%. I can see that your profile is 1,000% ready to go. But when I put you in front of that customer in that intro view, you have to close that deal. And so I think people taking responsibility of that is really, really, really important. And if you're uncertain about that, like, it's just confidence building. So what else is out there? The Hiring Our Heroes Career Spark. That is a resume generator created for military spouses in mind. So definitely check that one out. And then HHUSA is another organization that supports veterans and spouses, whether it's through job transition or actual job placement. And they actually do really great mock interviews. I know the USO also has a program where mock interviews are a big part of their transition. So you can always Google too, like military connected mock interview practice. Like, there's a bunch of resources out there. Those are just the few that I have on the top of my head.
Yeah, I feel like also for just the eye contact practice on camera, if it is virtual, Google Hangouts, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's totally free. You can get on with a friend, or you can get on by yourself and kind of see what you look like, what your background is, and see how everything goes. But Google Hangouts is what it was called. And then another question, and this is going to be the last one. What are some examples of the phrases you mentioned to have ready when you don't know the answer? Oh gosh, yes.
And I'll drop those. I always like those kinds of things that I can like copy and paste and save somewhere. So a good one is, could you repeat the question? Like, just ask that out. Just like, could you repeat that again for me? Maybe you weren't listening. Maybe you just aren't certain on what they mean. And usually if you ask somebody to repeat a question, they're not going to say the exact same thing. They're going to give you a little bit more explanation, and that's totally fine. So can you repeat the question for me again? If there's something that you know you've done, but you don't know how your experience connects, because a lot of time interviews, they'll ask you for like a real world experience, right? Like, how have you done this in a previous position? Those again are the things you prepare ahead of time. Like, just pretend you're going to be asked that no matter what. And that's a part of that intimate research into the role. Know a core value. So when you are asked, hey, this situation is happening, there's a fire burning in operations, you have been sent in to solve this problem. Give me an example of how you've done this previously in your life. You're either going to think, oh crap, I have no idea how to answer this question. I probably have done something like this, but I don't know how. So then you're in a really awkward situation if you're asked something and you have no idea how to answer it. So always just have one scenario somewhat connected to a core value, because if you're able to reply and say, you know, due to your core values, I know you have a mindful communication policy. I have experience in knowing how to take people through steps and meeting people where they are. Like, the more you can just talk and answer that question, that's a really good one. So sometimes asking another question is even more important than answering the question if you don't know how to answer it. So I can't think of them all off the top of my head. I don't have them all, but I have them written down because I've written some LinkedIn things on about it before. So I'll drop that resource for sure so that people have those ready to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up because we don't have any more questions. Definitely, if you're watching us on Facebook Live and there's comments at the bottom, you can ask any questions even after this live is over. I'll be back to see if there's anything new, and Erica kind of hangs around and she goes on there too. We'll definitely get your questions answered, or you can reach out to me at ljones@bluestarfam.org or Erica at
instantteams.com.
Perfect. And if you happen to be looking for employment, you can visit bluestarfam.org/spouseforce and fill out your profile, and we'll go ahead and start trying to match people up. All right.
Yeah, and we work, and just so people know, we work closely with Blue Star Families. So if we have new roles or new teams, like we'll talk to Blue Star Families and say, hey, who do you have in your spouse force profiles that, you know, could be a really great match for us. So we work together as partnerships to really combat what we know is a struggle out there in the community. So you can also create a profile with Instant Teams that puts you kind of through our pre-vetting process and queues you up in our database. So we've actually developed software to do this. It's really exciting. This has kind of happened since the start of this past year. And your profile will queue you up as we build new remote teams. We're able to see the pre-qualified candidates that are sitting in there ready to go. So create profiles on both sides, but just do know that we work together as well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.